I started off by telling you about this thing, the curse, the gift, I don't know what it is, of coming up with story ideas, storylines, events in fiction that then occur in fact. A worrying thing. And I just wanted to tell you about this particular story, which it scared me. I mean, really did. And it involved Steve Campman, my pathology advisor. And when I was writing this first book, Firemaker, I wanted to create a scene where Lee Yan, the Beijing detective, would demonstrate a humanity and compassion and sensitivity that Margaret, the pathologist, thinks he's incapable of. She thinks up to this point he's a bit of a brute. And I also wanted it to be something that would demonstrate her medical skills. So I created this street accident in which a woman on her bicycle is trapped underneath a car, and when she's brought out, there's a deep gash in her thigh, and the femoral artery is being severed. And the femoral artery is one of the major arteries in the body, and to cut that, it's like turning on a faucet. It's like the blood just pours out of you. You're dead within minutes. So you have to act really fast. And I discussed this with Steve, and he said, well, Margaret, she's slight built, and it takes a lot of pressure because it's set deep in the leg. To stop the blood flowing, he suggested that she might do it by putting her full weight on it, by standing on the woman's leg to seal up the vein. So that's what I wrote, in fact. If I fast forward about 18 months, Steve brought his family to come and stay with us in France. It was his first trip to Europe. It was June. They arrived on a Tuesday night. Fantastic weather. And Wednesday morning in our local market town was market day, and the whole town just gets taken over by market stalls and traders, and it's just a fantastic atmosphere. And I thought, well, he's got to see this. I mean, first time in Europe, you've got to go to the French market. So we took him down with his family, and the town was jam full of people, and it was a great atmosphere. And we noticed in the main square there was a big crowd around the terrace at the main cafe there. And as we approached, one of the people in the crowd detached himself and grabbed me, and I realised it was my neighbour from the village where I live. And he said, is this your friend the doctor? And I said, well, he's not really a doctor, he cuts up dead people. And he said, he'll do. And he grabbed him and pulled him off through the crowd, and I followed after him, and the crowd parted. And there, lying on the terrace of the cafe, was a woman, I'd say in her early 60s, in from the country to do her shopping, and she had a couple of baskets full of vegetables and fruit, and they were spilled all over the stones. And she was lying there in a pool of blood, and the blood was gouting from a huge wound in her leg, in her thigh. And we were all kind of totally shocked by this, and open mouth. And what had happened to the woman? She'd been weaving her way between the tables in the cafe, and they had these stands for the umbrellas for shade, and the big circular metal base, very heavy, with a tube that stands up about this height, 18, 20 inches high, big metal steel tube that the wooden pole normally sits in for the umbrellas. And for some reason they didn't have the umbrellas in, and she'd stood on the edge of this thing and tipped over and fallen right on top of the steel tube, which is like razor sharp around the edge of it, and it just gouged right up into her thigh and severed her femoral artery. And Steve, he immediately knew what was going on. He sussed out what had happened. He got down there and he got his hand, he didn't stand on her, I'm happy to say, but he got down there, he got his hand into the wound, and he found the end of the artery and pinched it shut. And he had to wait like that for about 3, 4, 5 minutes until the emergency services arrived. And we had them coming, you know, the SAMU, they call them there, the medics, and they pulled up at the curbside and they all jumped out. And of course, being French, they had to shake hands with everybody first. And we were going, excuse me, there's a woman dying here. And they went, all right, okay. They came along and they kind of sussed out what was going on and took the appropriate action, and they got her all fixed up into the ambulance and away to the hospital. And you know, she survived, but only just. And as all this was happening, I thought, this is weird, because this is just like the scene I wrote. Here's a woman involved in a street accident who has a severed femoral artery and whose life gets saved by the medical attention of a visiting pathologist. And I thought, well, you know, it's exactly the same. And not only that, but the visiting pathologist is the pathologist who advised me what to write in the scene that I wrote in the book, which was even stranger. And then it occurred to me, again standing there looking at all the blood and watching Steve shaking, because he was quite shaken up by it, I realised that if I hadn't decided to write this book, I would never have met Steve, because I would never have needed a pathology advisor. He would not have been in France, in that market square, that day, when nobody else knew what to do, and that woman would have been dead. And that made all the hairs rise up the back of my neck. And from that day on, I've been very careful about what I write.